That report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. Let me introduce our guests. I'd like to welcome to this program Dr. Abubakar Atiku Tambuwal, former Managing Director of the Transmission Company of Nigeria. He is currently a board member, a board director in the Abuja Electricity Distribution Company, AEDC. Thanks for being with us here tonight.
Thank you. Good evening, Bios.
Right. Let me also welcome Kunle Kola-Olubio, member, Presidential Committee, Electricity Tariff, and President, Nigeria Consumer Protection Network. It's good to have you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Well, we're being joined by Professor Emenike Iyogu, Dean, Faculty of Engineering, University of Nigeria, Nsukka. He's also Director, African Center of Excellence for Sustainable Power and Energy Development. He joins us from our Enugu Network Center. Prof, nice to see you.
Good evening.
So let me welcome Dr. Sam Amadi, former Executive Secretary of the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC, who joins us via Zoom from Owerri. Dr. Amadi. All right. I spoke to him a short while ago, so I don't believe he's with us on this. Well, at some point in time, you can be part of the discussion in the studio, but when we get there, we'll remind you of the procedure and the process, as we always do every Tuesday. For now, let's properly situate the power situation in Nigeria, if you excuse the pun. Engineer Abubakar Atiku Tambuwal.
Well, thank you very much. The power situation in Nigeria, as we have seen in the clip, is something to be worried about. A lot of funds, a lot of money has been sunk into it by federal government and related stakeholders, but we have not seen the commensurate improvement in power delivery. Well, as we all know, power is such a complicated business. When you compare it to telecoms, for example, you see that there are a lot of issues that has to be contended with. Major among them is the generation, that is production of this electricity itself. It has its own issues, and Nigeria has been battling with that right from the onset when the first generation started in Nigeria in 1886. It may interest viewers to know that Nigeria has started enjoying electricity pretty much earlier than some developed countries from history. But unfortunately, we are left behind. So in a quest to really catch up, we have to look at means of improving the generation. Our capabilities now is such that combined generation availability is not more than 15,000 megawatts. A country of more than 200 million, which by rule of thumb, we should have 200,000 megawatts. But unfortunately, we are grappling with 4,000 megawatts, at best 5,000 megawatts. So the generation is one aspect which has to be enhanced for us to develop. Our demand right now is in excess of 25 megawatts, 35,000 megawatts, just on a approximate scale. It could be more because we have a lot of industries, a lot of consumers who are off-grid, who are not connected to the grid. Cumulatively, if we put them together, I believe we are utilizing, we can take up to 45,000 megawatts presently. So with this development, whereby our demand surpass generation, we will always be in problem of imbalance.
All right, we'll return to some of the issues you raised, but let's also ask Nicola Olubi to give an assessment of what it is like. If we're talking about maybe 5,000 megawatts, when actually, as he says, we can do 45.
Well, thank you very much. Interestingly, the UN benchmark, like Dr. Atiko have said, is 1,000 megawatts to 1 million people, meaning that Nigeria have one of the highest global energy poverty index. Because if we are talking about 1,000 to 1 million people, what it means is that with a peak generation capacity, willing capacity of 5,800, that means 5 to 6 million people in Nigeria will be, by UN benchmark, will be having access to energy, which is not a good picture by global standard. Having said that, in 2013, we advocated for a paradigm shift from the public sector driven electricity grid value chain to private sector driven. And in our opinion, we were of the opinion that the investors came with all what we call portmanteau or briefcase, and they were doing PowerPoint presentation like in modern days we call Yahoo business model. So they came, they said, one, we had a very huge metering gap. They came and promised that under the service level agreement, they are going to close the metering gap. The issue of estimated bill, which have more or less become cash cow, will be addressed. They equally said they are going to invest in generation and distribution. But sadly, what we've had is that most of the infrastructure that have continued to generate money for the downstream has been the legacy infrastructure. There have not been significant investment by the so-called investors in quotes. And from our own end as end users, there have been a lot of investment. You go to different communities across the length and breadth of Nigeria, there are a lot of investment that have been made by consumers, by religious organizations, and non-state actors that have not been properly accounted for. And so, having said that, talking about the mainstream of the value chain, that means transmission. As you see, I was a member of the National Technical Investigative Panel on Power System Collapses, System Stability and Reliability in 2013. Not until yesterday, when we have, draw me to the ears of the power that bid all their Twitter handle every month that matter in the present administration. Not until yesterday that the World Bank came up to have a meeting with the TCN, and they are talking of SCADA. I recall that in 2013, we had a meeting with Engineer Sambo, who I think was the MD of TCN there, in his office. We had about 20 system collapses. And so we have a grid. It's like driving an articulated vehicle without horn, without lights, without brake, and without the necessary safety valve. So you don't run a modern grid without you being able to monitor in real time through the SCADA system, the flow and the cascading of electricity. It has to be automated, grid automation. That is not there. For example, in a typical home, once there are faults on your line, yes, you have what they call the distribution board or circuit breakers. These are elementary health, safety, and environment components of safe use of electricity. So on the grid, like I'm sure you are familiar with New Busa, Mokwa, Jeba, and Benin Kebbi. Just on the 14th of this month, there was a fire incident on the transmission grid in Kanji Jeba, 132. The conductors, maybe because it's obsolete, but even when there are issues like that, the essence of protection is to make sure that devices like that are activated. There are fire sensors, there are fire alarms. There are different devices in the system at different layers that their primary purposes is to make sure that even when there is a high frequency, high voltage, There are protection, this thing that you have under frequency control, you have relay, you have over frequency control, different layers. Now they are obsolete. We don't have reactors at some point. We don't have breakers. We don't have as simple as thunder light arrestor. Look at Benin Kebbi. The next day, after 14 or 15, there was a Benin Kebbi fire incident in Abuja. As simple as thunder light arrestor. When the thunder strikes a substation, the essence of it is that you say God of thunder, Songo. Yes, it operates in the power system environment. That's why you say the hand of the devil. But the thunder light arrestor, the essence of it scientifically is to make sure that when there's a lightning, the thunder light arrestor will serve as a safety valve. In Apo incident, it wasn't there. Calabar, we've lost transmission infrastructure. And some of these infrastructures, you don't just go to the shelf and get them.
Right, so the situation is dire.
Yes, it's very there.
All right, and these are the issues that are on the table today as the country now decides that there should be a new vision to address all these once and for all. Professor Emenike Eyogu, let's come to you for your opening comments.
Thank you very much. Yes, the issues being discussed are very serious issues that have affected all of us over the years. And these are to do with, number one, the technical know-how and human resources available to even maintain the system that we are inherited from the past. That's number one. Of course, generally as a country, we have the propensity to import everything that we need. Some of what have been discussed here by fellow guests borders on the fact that we do not have the technical wherewithal to maintain, talk less of producing some of these equipment that they mentioned here. In that atmosphere, of course, we will just be suffering what we are suffering today. Be it grid collapse, be it that we don't have reactors. These reactors are circuit and power system elements that maintain the level of voltages across the power system. So if we don't manufacture these things locally, there's no way we'll meet up with the maintenance requirement. We can't be in a situation to do what we call preventive maintenance. And in power systems, if you're not able to do preventive maintenance, what has been happening to us will keep on happening to us. And for us to be able to do preventive maintenance, it means we have to have the capacity to have these devices and systems. We have to have fundamentally the capability and the capacity to manufacture some of these very critical power components, especially when we want to run a system that covers thousands and thousands of kilometers. You are generating power in Shiroro and Kainji, and you're controlling from Oshobo, which is thousands of kilometers away. And you're wheeling power to Lagos, that's also thousands of kilometers away. In fact, the technical losses that are caused from those thousands of kilometers alone even affects what we are producing. By some estimate, the technical losses that occurs in transmitting this power down thousands of kilometers is close to 25%. So even without the system being down, you're already losing 25% of what you're generating. So it's a very compound problem, and we need to think and strategize very fundamentally what we have to do to get ourselves out of this situation.
And it's, we hope that Dr. Sam Amadi is right there at this time with us. Dr. Amadi, are you there?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, yeah, there you are. Right, so you've heard from the last three speakers. Let's get your impression. And so we can match what the situation is now and what we expect it to be with the new drive to allow for greater production. And let's just start by getting your views first.
Yeah, well, I think there's not much difference. The question will not be what do we emphasize? We can look at the retail issues around grid collapse, look at, like he has mentioned, issues around some of the circuit breakers and so on and so forth. But for me, the real issue is the modeling problem. That means, how do you want to build that? Two, the issues around project management. So I think we all know that we have all kinds of problems. One, you have capacity constraints. You don't have enough, neither enough generation, enough distribution capacity, or enough transmission. And this was part of what, from 1999, 2000, when this reform started, those constraints were well known. Two, you have a problem of commerciality, meaning that historically people are not paying, and therefore the liquidity, the financing to use to run the system was not there. So that led to the collapse. So if you're not getting enough, if you're not paying and you're not charging and you're not managing revenue well, it means that you won't have enough money to expand and maintain network. This is not engineering failure. There are enough good engineers. You know that you need to maintain your network. You need to relay them. You need to remove them. You need to expand them, even as population urbanization increases. So, and usually we say that most countries will do like 2,000 megawatts or 2,000 to 5,000 additional every year because of urbanization, because of increase in GDP growth, leading to more consumption, is reliance on technology expanded. So that's the second issue. So commerciality. Are you able to have a commercially viable network which can finance itself as in a sustainable measure? The third crisis we had was a crisis of policy continuity. So that we have largely cured. Since 2000, we've had significant and reasonable policy continuity. The Buhari administration continued in large measure the PDP policies, and this government continued the measure. So, and the fourth issue here is consumer satisfaction arising from both adequacy, affordability, and transparency of managing supply. So if you put all this together, that gives you the crisis we are in. Now, the problem is, in 2000, when we designed the National Electoral Power Policy, which is the policy fundamental for everything we have done, we conceived of this grid in what I call in a market fundamentalist manner. The idea is simple, that the problem was public enterprise. The solution was private. Now, that's not a problem. That's so simplistic. The problem is that the system was trapped in significant inefficiency. And so one of the things that will help you is both liberalization, yes, get private sector in. Two, commercialize, yes. Three, competition, create multiple buyer, multiple seller. That will be a gradual process. So, but I think at some point, we got too fascinated about privatization. Without focusing well on corporatization. I did the first audit account of Nepal. Old Nepal up until 2013 or 2022. There was no audit account. So you sold in 2013 assets that don't have proper valuations, assets that have not developed managerial competence over time, industry that has not matured in regulation. So what we are seeing today is that because we are presumptive, we are assumed that once private sector comes in private equity, things will change. So we're now going back to dealing with some of those things we could have done even without privatizing. But take Egypt, for example. They are now having a conversation around privatization. They brought in significant quantity to their grid. They were able to be more reasonable and commercialize their process. They laid out a much more structured approach towards competitive private market. So I think that modeling had a problem. And that had made us not able to solve quickly those three problems. availability, capacity growth,
Okay.
commerciality, and consumer, service.
All right.
Of service.
Okay, thank you. But at this point, let's begin to look at the aspects, some aspects, key aspects of the new act, which this government signed. One of them, of course, has to do with states now having the power to generate, distribute, and to get independent producers to run their own grid. But it leads me to a fundamental question here. The whole trouble with the power systems in Nigeria, could it be said to be one of generation and distribution alone, or one that was that it also included the monopoly which the federal government enjoyed? So we don't end up thinking the minute that monopoly is broken, then of course all the power problems are solved.
Yeah, well, as you rightly said, it is not just one of problem or belonging to only one aspect of the power sector. Power sector value chain has its own fundamental components, which they have to work in synergy, they have to work together. Once one of them has issues, it means the whole power sector will have issue. If, for example, we are having issues with generation, we don't have adequate, that imbalance is there. And if transmission cannot adequately wheel out the generated power, it becomes a problem. Then when we come to the distribution side, if all the power is brought to the doorsteps of the distribution companies and they cannot effectively distribute it and sell and bring in the revenue, then you are also in another serious problem. So it has to be holistically addressed. Each stakeholder of the value chain must be able to operate optimally and provide its own activity such that you don't have failure. We are having issues with system instability. As Kunle rightly said, one of it is the system collapses, which happens. And you cannot single-handedly blame transmission for it. Generation has its own part to play. We have to have spinning reserve. Even if we have enough generation, there should be a reserve generator that will serve as a shock absorber, so that once the system is having imbalance from generation and distribution, those generators will automatically start up to stabilize the system. That is on the generation part. On transmission also, you should not have a situation whereby you lose your lines. A 330 kV line 0132, which carries a bulk power supply, once it tripped as a result of asphalt or whatever, it is going to throw the system into serious issue of voltage and frequency. And if you don't maintain that frequency window, then you also have a lot of instability. Likewise, distribution, if they take more load than they require, there will be issues. It's just like if you have Pass My Neighbor, try using air conditioner on it and see what will happen. So that is it. If distribution is not disciplined enough to remain within the available generation, it can send the system into instability. So these problems has to be holistically addressed, and everyone has to play its own role to ensure that you have a stable system.
Right. With this liberalization that is in place now, have you seen, what are the feelers that you're getting? Have you seen concerted efforts to take advantage of this from either states, corporate organizations,
Well, like Dr. Atiku said, it's like a wheelbarrow that in another part of the country we say merua, the wheelbarrow, that the truck that is being used to convey load, it has its capacity. So since privatization from 2013, the first thing we want to draw to the air of government is that we have a deal with the private sector, generation and distribution, that we want to have a 10-year moratorium, because we know these investors are stupendously rich, and each season they go into different political parties, as done in other clime, to put in their money without apology to lobby in the policies of government, successive administration. And we want to just put it to Mr. President, haven't come with a matter of renew hope. We know the hope we had in 1993, and he's saying he's coming to renew our hope, and which we have seen him demonstrated the genuineness and political will. We signed an agreement with the private sector that they are going to come to experiment, like a modeling, for 10 years. Initially, we're supposed to have like KPIs, mid-term review in 2018. The investors lobby as a cartel to make sure that that was not done. By November this year, that is end of October, first week of November, the 10-year moratorium will expire. As said in Hausa parlance, we are saying without apology that this has failed. Privatization of power sector was supposed to reduce public sector expenditure on the part of government. But between 2013 to this, federal government have injected nothing less than $10 billion US in the power sector. You have the cement project. It's well intended. Now, the cement project was packaged without discussion with the generation. In procurement benchmark all over the world, and in Nigeria, if you want to domesticate it, there's what we call the need assessment. You go to the user department or the agencies that will need the equipment. Like transmission, there are needs of transmission. From generation, like you said, you have black start, you have spinning reserve, which is like a power bank for this, which is supposed to enhance resilience and ability to restore power when there are system distortion or total collapse. That was not taken into consideration. All the challenges of the transmission subsector, they were not factored in by the cement project. Now, I said earlier that federal government have injected 10 billion naira in a supposedly privatized sector. Now, most of the discos, to the best of our knowledge, averagely, there are discos that make 10 billion naira a month. Now come to the issue of regulatory ecosystem. We have regulatory, void. There's what we call the open book review. When Dr. Sam Amadi was in the NEC, open book review indicted a lot of distribution companies. They took loan from the bank and exposed the books of our financial sector to instability. And so, open book review of NEC was not implemented. So recruitment of regulatory leadership is a major issue. Then having said that, the non-state actor too, like we have said, have invested a whole lot of money. So we want federal government, we encourage federal government not to invest further public sector fund into the power sector. Let us have end-to-end privatization, and the discourse in its present form, they are chewing more than they can bite. If a disco is making 10 billion, 20 billion in a month, how much of this goes to the electricity pool embed? NEC gave something that they call minimum remittance order. A generation company don't go to the gas supplier and go and say minimum remittance payment. You pay on cash and carry basis. You must even pay upfront. That's why we have if you, like Aku Gas commitment of NIPP, if you pay upfront 6 months, 2 years, the cost will be lower, because you are buying in bulk. So all these issues, as per the grid, our grid, no matter, even if federal government decide to put 30 billion US in the grid today, the capacity of the grid is like the smaller truck that cannot take more than its load. Is 5,800. If you take more than that, to collapse. Coming to the new Electricity Act is a game changer. Because what has been lacking in the power sector post-privatization is the absence of competition. I'm standing in for consumer. We do not have, right to choice or alternative. It's not done anywhere. So the monopoly, like you have said, federal government should pull out its stake, 40% or 60% stake out of the present this thing, review the power sector privatization in its gamut, then the state now give us an option to have alternative. Now, when the state began to go full-fledged into involvement in the power sector, what is required of the state is that the state will need to create the legal, institutional, and regulatory framework, and beside that, provide the security, which is the enabling environment, and land. Most of the states, their tariff is not going to be at the tariff of the national grid. It's going to be willing buyer, willing seller, which is we want stable electricity, and we have 774 local government. We equally need to explore our energy mix such that each local government, like in Gombe, you may have sun and wind. In Lagos, you may have other sources of maybe biomass and what have you, other sources of energy mix, so that each local government we may target like or senatorial district 10 megawatts. If we start from 10 megawatts per local government, there are some senators that instead of investing in the establishment of university that we have all over the place, if we incentivize them and they set up 10 megawatts, it will reduce rural-urban migration, and collectively we can talk of reindustrialization.
Interesting thing you talk about power in the 774 local governments across the country. That's one thing Professor Iyogu will be very interested in, because of course it's something he's always talked about. Prof.
Yeah, exactly. Let me start by saying that the new act is a step in the right direction. In fact, I didn't even know how we came to over-centralize the power sector, because I remember back in 1984, my industrial attachment after my third year in the university was in the Imo State, the then Imo State government of Sam Mbakwe. He established perhaps the first independent power company in Nigeria back then, in 1984. It was operational, and it was just a 35 megawatt diesel-driven power station, and it supplied the then 21 local government areas of Imo State. Okay, and that was where I did my 3 months industrial attachment, and we were generating power and distributing power at 33 kV. And almost all the 21 local government areas had power from that. We had a spinning reserve of 5 megawatt, which we take down one generator, service it, and put it back again. And 24/7, that power station was on. And I was there as a third year industrial attaché. And I see it work. It has worked before. Now, what's the concept? The concept is that of distributed generation. Just like the last speaker I've mentioned, distributed generation is just try as much as possible to use the local resources at a particular location and generate enough power and distribute within the immediate vicinity, just like we did in Imo State then. With just 35 megawatts of power, we serviced 21 local governments. I can tell you almost all the cottage industries then were serviced by this power station. And the whole economy was powering at a very local level. So the same thing can be replicated now with the new act that has also now freed up the production of electricity. And I don't think it's so complicated, because what have been discussed so far is the difficulties we have in even wheeling more than 5,000 to 6,000 megawatts of power through the national grid. So we have a fundamental problem, very fundamental indeed, that even if we keep on producing, even if we have enough production, have enough generation of electricity, we cannot even transmit this effectively. And the reason is very simple. We don't have the technical know-how to that level. The one we have, we cannot maintain them. So we have to see the reality of these things. No matter the amount of English we speak, the fact is that those power lines that we see all over the place are not manufactured in the country. The generation turbines are not manufactured in the country. So these are very fundamental problems, very, very fundamental problems, and we cannot escape from that. Therefore, when we talk about supplying power to 774 local government areas, it's a very simple concept, and some have tried it in the past. I just gave an example of 1984 Imo State. There's nothing so difficult about having a policy that encourages each local government or a group of local government to find the best energy mix that fits them. An example have just been given of maybe solar. Again, I have to be very mindful of when we talk about solar, because that is also a very interesting technology that can solve our problem, but unfortunately, again, what is needed to actually exploit solar energy in Nigeria is also very much imported. Okay, the batteries, the solar panels, the controllers, none of them are being manufactured effectively in the country. So when we begin to recommend such technology, again, we are being dependent on outsiders. If you don't get the battery from China or from Korea, you can't have an effective power system that's running on solar. The same thing goes for wind. And therefore, we have to look around and see what actually can we do that we have a comparative advantage. That's why a few days ago, when I delivered my inaugural lecture, one of the recommendations we made was look in the direction of waste. We look in the direction of waste. And I believe every local government area in Nigeria and its environment is capable of producing a certain amount of waste that will give them 10 megawatts of power, just as been mentioned by the last speaker. And it's not rocket science, I can tell you. And some of us in the country have been able to develop technologies that will have comparative advantage. And because we are not willing this power from, say, if our local government area in Ogun State to Abuja, we are generating this power in E4, and we are distributing it within E4 and its environment. That's distributed generation. And we're going to solve a good part of this problem by focusing on a policy that gives power directly, very much directly to the people. And that is what we call distributed generation in this end. And we are saying that it is possible to power this from the waste that we humans generate from our environment, and we can go a step further than that. We have this technology that is possible for us to exploit our coal reserves in this country, which is not being touched. I don't think nobody is talking about coal again in this country, and that is very sad. Of course, we are in the generation of sustainability and environmental friendliness, okay? That's okay. Now, not many people know that the whole world, the percentage of energy that was supplied through coal last year was 39%. Even the industrialized countries are still dependent on coal. However, there are technologies that now give you a very low carbon footprint for coal. They are called clean coal technologies. So again, these are some of the fundamental areas which we have comparative advantage. Coal is one of the cheapest energy mix that one can have. Waste from human activities in our urban cities, and also from agro production. We have a lot of waste in the rice producing areas, rice husk, maize producing areas all over the country, and some other agricultural products like cassava, yam, and all the rest of them. So if we have a very good estimate, and we've gone further to do that estimate in some areas of the country, and I can assure you that most of the localities in this country have enough, not even 10 megawatts, to give you 20 megawatts of power from waste. And then if you add this clean technology that can use coal, I think we are going to go places in terms of solving this energy problem that we have in Nigeria.
Dr. Sam Amadi, let's come to you at this one. Speaking of what used to be, we recall with nostalgia, Plateau State then, just then, with NESCO in operation and providing power, which was quite stable then.
I think as chairman of NEC, I had to deal with NESCO, and I think NESCO is still there, but you see, three things to bear in mind. Things have changed, number one. Nigeria started its grid as a decentralized grid. As somebody mentioned, the first power plant, it's about 1896 or thereabouts. A few years after British got his grid power, we got a 25 megawatts coal somewhere in Lagos. We had then also the Electricity Commission of Nigeria, ECN. Then we had Kanji Dam, we have the Northern Dam Authority. So it was actually a decentralized grid. We also had coal in Udi, in now Enugu State. We had perhaps different, even NESCO in Jos was distributed generation, where the company was generating power and serving an enclave, a regular power. Today, maybe something close to what I see in Okobo, in Bone, for example, where the NNPC, the refineries and the oil companies serve themselves. As NEC, Chairman, we had all the regulations for all this. We have the embedded generation regulation that allows you to drop in power. We did that under my tenure. We had a independent transmission network, which means we have the regulation to even run independent island transmission service, independent distribution service. So we have those regulations. But you see, the market, everything has to evolve holistically. Yes, we will have the renewable energy tariff for renewable energy. Look at South Africa. South Africa is crowding in renewable energy gradually. So, for example, they may give a 5 years, 10 years to say we're going to get about 20% of our energy mix to be renewable. You don't just hit like that. You plan it. Why? Because there are financial issues. Thankfully, technology is decreasing the costs. So today, you can actually, with batteries from Japan, Japanese technology has helped a lot to store renewable solar, for example. The problem used to be that solar was not storable enough, and so it can use as a load base. It can use it as a base power to drive industries. But now those are, so with technology, renewables are becoming very, very important. But my argument has been that first we should optimize gas supply. You see, we have abundant gas supply. Optimize that use and gradually crowd in renewable. Now, renewable has technological issues as well. You have to have a smart grid, utilization, because it's the sensitivity and complexity of energy mix, managing the dispatch, system operations, it requires greater technological sophistication. Part of why we have incessant power failure is that the TCA is still not on SCADA. They don't have the technological backbone to do wheeling of power and dispatch and system operation in an unbundled electricity market. Energy economics teaches you one thing. When we unbundle, we want to get efficiency. But unbundling creates a coordination problem. That's why discos are complaining, drop the load for us at X. TCN says, we'll drop it here. And then we have standard power, because it's unbundling triggers what economists call coordination problem. You have to coordinate those things. You need sophistication. So it's easy to say, let's migrate to natural renewables fast. We have to make haste slowly. You have to build the capacity, the technology, the competencies, and phase it in smartly. But another point is very important. The new Electricity Act signed by this government is very important. But I hear many states, people have consulted me, every state wants to do its own. No, you can't do sustainably on state-by-state basis. You have to become a zone, a region. Because if you look at Europe, many countries in Europe are joining together to form intra-state transmission networks across the Nordic zone. You see one company serving maybe Norway, Swiss. You see the French company that's serving both UK. So we shouldn't think that we can just have a Ekiti state, its own grid, or its own grid. Imo, no. What the new act will help you to is three things. One, you can have a regulator dealing with, let's say, distribution side of it, customer service. It's difficult for NEC to know what's happening in the village. So the state can handle consumer side. Then regions, southwards, north, can come together and create regional grid and make sure that it intersects quickly with other grids.
All right.
It's important that Nigeria should be aiming at industrial power.
Okay.
You need a national grid that is strong, and then you have to match it, complement it with mini grids, off grids, with renewable energies, and then it can switch us and switch on. But really, we need to optimize gas, optimize coal. Our coal is super critical, which means it's not too deadly. And with new technology like prop cells, you can optimize the value of both coal and gas while we transition gradually and currently into renewable.
All right. We also have a number of other reports which will be looking at the issues at stake. Let's take this one from Lagos. All right. We have the Lagos report coming up. Okay. All right. If we have some challenges with that, let's try this other one from... Well, we have another one from Mina, right? We have the Lagos. We don't have the Lagos. We can go to Mina. We can do Mina. All right. Then let's go Kaduna in this case.
Constant and steady supply of electricity is what Tunde Salau needs for every stage of his printing production.
Most of the problem is based on the fact that there is no light in this particular area. If you come in the morning, you'll find out that there will be no light. Sometimes this thing happens from morning till night. You don't have light to operate.
Because of the consistent power outage, Tunde spent huge amount of money to power this generator. So the commitment by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to allow states build their own power plant and generate electricity to ensure stable power supply is a great idea to Tunde and many Nigerians for the revival of industries that collapsed due to unstable power supply.
If you look at the law for Kaduna, it is called the Utilities Bill, and it will be establishing the Kaduna Utilities Regulatory Agency. Looking at Kaduna perspective, there is the challenge of financial guarantee. So you see a lot of developers, power producers, generators will come in with a beautiful proposal wanting to produce 10 megawatts, 100 megawatts. But however, they have one thing in common. They require a financial guarantee in order for them to execute the project.
However, successive administrations had made effort to improve power supply through the provision of the needed facilities. Behind me is a 250 megawatts gas power plant here in Kudantan. The project started in 2009 with the intention to supply stable electricity to about 11 textiles industries in Kaduna State. But project like this is yet to be completed.
It's designed to operate on dual fuel, meaning it can operate on gas and LPFO. The coming of the AKK gas pipeline, it means a brighter future for the power plant and as well for Kaduna State.
The consumers of electricity in Kaduna State are still hopeful that the domestic gas expansion project of the AKK gas pipeline will turn things around to provide enough gas for this 250 megawatts Kidandan power plant for a constant and stable supply of electricity.
All right, that report from Kaduna. I think we've got another from Enugu this time.
The poor generation and supply of electricity in Nigeria has continued to linger despite the privatization of the power generation and distribution arms of the sector since November 2023. This power challenge has defied solutions by successive governments over the years, irrespective of the huge sums pumped into the privatized and government-owned arms of the value chains.
The reasons are obvious, and that is the fact that the equipment are obsolete. Some of them have been built over 20 years ago, and because of that, they are not operating optimally.
Data from the most recent quarterly report of Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission (NEC) for the third quarter of last year indicated that available generation capacity in the period under review was less than 5,000 megawatts for a population of over 200 million people. With the inauguration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, expectations are high for a positive change in the electricity industry. The new act signed by President Tinubu, experts say, consolidates all legislations dealing with the electricity supply industry to provide ideal institutionalized framework to guide the post-privatization phase of the Nigerian electricity supply industry, NESI. With the new presidential order, there is a framework for the improvements of access to electricity in the rural, suburban, and urban areas through the use of conventional sources and renewable energy.
We look at the energy sector in Nigeria, it's almost somehow one-sided per se. We have thermal sector that provide electricity and also the hydro. But we need to increase the energy mix in Nigeria by having renewable energy injected into the power system in Nigeria.
I think the last time it happened was a long time ago, so which shows that a lot of effort is being made by the people responsible to ensure that the grid is maintained and that it does not collapse.
In line with the presidential mandate of actualizing a steady power supply in the country, Enugu State government has keyed in by signing the state electricity bill into law, describing it as a major step towards economic growth and making the state the premier destination for investment, business, and tourism.
If we're able to do what the governor of Enugu State has done by introducing and signing a bill on electric company energy in this state, that it will be a good ground so that investors can come and actually lash on it.
Giving end users of electricity in Nigeria the opportunity to buy prepaid meters on shelves, energy experts concluded will enhance power accountability and customer satisfaction, as well as value for money.
All right, another of those reports, and maybe at this point we'll just take a short break. When we return, there'll be more issues about the new Power Act, and at that time the lines will be opened, which means you can get to join in the discussion in the studio. Stay with us on NTA Tuesday Live. We'll be back shortly.
The Council of Our Fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
I believe we have fought one civil war too many in this country. So those who experience it will run away from it.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Right, thanks for staying with us. This segment The lines, the phone lines will be open, the numbers will be on your screen. You can take advantage of those numbers and call in and air your views on the subject matter. We always remind you every Tuesday, if you're calling in tonight and your call gets through to the studio, do us a favor, turn down the volume of your TV set. That's the way to avoid the hurlback or the echo. And we also encourage you to go straight to the point and ask that you not bother about greetings. Just a simple hello would do. Let's try to get those calls coming in so you can air your views and let others as well get on the platform and be able to contribute to the discussion we're having here. It's all about the new vision and the power value chain and what needs to be done to get power stable, affordable in Nigeria. Now, with this act, states can award licenses. There is, of course, the caveat that there can be interstate or international transfer of power, but within the states, they can generate, provide mini grids which will provide electricity for the areas there. Now, beyond this, what else can be done, and how quickly do you think things can get up and running? Nigerians have been starved of adequate power for forever.
Well, the act is really a very good breakthrough for us in terms of liberalizing and providing electricity to nook and corners of this country. If the states are willing, they have the political will to participate, I think they should be able to attract investors who will come up with power plants in form of mini grids. And they don't need to go into transmission aspect. They can always distribute their power at 33 kV and 11 kV levels. And they can also have means of collection so that the liquidity of the sector will be improved. Because that is one of the major areas. Because no matter what you generate or transmit, if you don't get back the cash payment for this electricity, you won't get anywhere. So with this act, I think the states will be able to have a better means of collection. Customers should be able to be metered 100% instead of the way we are having a lot, more than 7 million gaps in metering. But with that, the states can be able to meter all its customers, and you'll be able to collect 100% of your revenue. If that happens, I assure you that we will have a lot of relief in terms of power delivery in Nigeria.
Interesting question.
Just to build on what Dr. Atiko have just said, there are two unique incidences that one would like to use as an analogy for the game-changer effect of the Electricity Act. In Kosubosu, there was a network that was created by, I think Kosubosu should be in Kwara State, was created by former Governor Bukola Saraki, pre-privatization, and it fell within the land, the discourse license, definition of the distribution license created a kind of entitlement and landlord syndrome. Geometric has what they call the Aba ring fence, where he was trying to do what they call sector-specific generation. You have, maybe generator, you have transmission network or whatever network, and you go specifically to meet the needs of a particular cluster, to the cluster. Now, because it fell within the southeast region, it became an issue because it was anti-competition. It was anti-competition, and so Enugu Disco said, "This is our region. For you now to even come and bring alternative within the southeast, we are landlords, so you must give us what we call returns, what we call Omonile syndrome." Now you go to Kosubosu, there's a network that was there. It was not linked to 132, 330, or 33 kV line. It was just a network that was designed by Kwara State government. An investor came in and they wanted to do generation through using photovoltaic solar PV. And for the past 2 years, we've been talking to the management of Ibadan Disco. This network was not created by them. The conductors were not procured by them. The poles were not procured by them. It was not even linked to the grid. So it was not even part of the network asset that the distribution licensee pay for. So these are the issues that we're talking about. That within a state or any region or locality, you cannot start running network. Look at, one began to wonder, how did just electricity distribution company and NESCO were able to collaborate without conflict? Because NESCO is a legacy entity. But the issue of geometric, the package was even designed pre-privatization. So these are the type of novel ideas that it will create competition. And another major concern is that most of the investors that come to invest in Nigeria, the incentive then was the amount of money we were offering for our generation. Particularly if you are coming from solar, majority of them are interested in generating to the grid. Most of them will say, oh, we're going to generate, what's it called, 100 megawatts, and they will now come for grid connection agreement. Majority of these investors from abroad, they will want security, maybe put call option agreement, partial risk guarantee, and the rate we offer them then, World Bank that will have provided the funds said the rate is not globally competitive. We were offering maybe like 15 cents, and at a point they all came because of maybe 15 cents. It got to 12 cents. It was gradually reduced to how many cents now? 7 cents. And so they all pull out their resources because what they were intending to do is to come put the package and sell. Once they sign all those commitments, PCO is put call option agreement, partial risk guarantee of World Bank or African Development, this thing. Once they get it, they will now resell it because it's like you now, like a bazaar. That was exactly what we were trying to do. But we will have said, we will have entered agreement with the World Bank and say, look, come, provide this guarantee. Maybe they will have given a special structure. Let's create the energy glut. So emphatically, what should be our emphasis is that whatever we are doing in the state, for us to get foreign investors without creating that bazaar, it might be difficult. But at least for the indigenous investors with deep pocket, like Geometric is an indigenous company. So there are Nigerians that may want to set up, like you have some of these Dangote Boha Cement, that may want to set up this kind of generation line, value chain. The issue of the former narrative were impediments to investment in that area. And so that is the game changer that this electricity is going to create. But for foreign investors, without partial risk guarantee, without put call option agreement, without creating a bazaar, we may not get this. But Nigerians have deep pocket. What they are just saying is enabling environment, institutional framework, legal framework, and regulatory framework. Of course, when it is designed, as customers, if I want to power my system with generator, maybe diesel or what have you, I know how much it costs me. And so to some of us, as to cottage industries, the issue is reliability and guarantee of electricity. Is the issue of the pricing of the market is going to be globally competitive and it's going to be willing buyer, willing seller.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I have the first call tonight coming from Plateau. Estefanus calling in from Plateau. Hello, go ahead. Estefanus, are you with us?
And also key issue here regarding is monitoring. To monitor the necessary projects which are put in place, we like that merit. And also we like the merit of continuity and administration may start up the project in regard to power sector. But once a tenure has elapsed and the new administration will not come in and continue that project, and in looking to that, the investors may not like to invest into the power sector because there was improper management, maintenance of the project in ground. Then looking at that place, my suggestion here is let the government build a structure in regard to implementation and also in regard to monitoring and also in regard to maintenance and also in regard to continuity for us to have a power supply. And looking at the Nigeria at large, one of the issues also is that Nigeria doesn't take into consideration that we have now grown in number than before. But had it been Nigeria took that into consideration, definitely we will have a good power supply in our country. And I also like that Nigeria should supply a prepaid meter. Looking at that, power supply will also be instability. Because once there's a meter where there's no power supply, then definitely there will be income in that aspect. But as now the power supply is being shared or the bill is being shared across the board by way of having no proper drive, a house might be cut off with a bill of 10,000 just because of there's no meter. But once there is meter, then definitely I suggest that there is going to be a power supply. Because once you do not provide a power supply, then definitely there will not be an income to the state. I think that is one of my points.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much, Stephanus from Plateau State. Thank you. Yes, let's keep the calls coming so we can get different perspectives on the issues at stake. But let's go over to Professor Eyogu at this point. And you talked earlier on about the energy mix and how this can help improve the situation that we have. Let's get more on that now.
We focus on energy mix a lot because it has to deal with what is termed as energy security. If you recall, when the world came alive in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, and later in 1997, that's when collectively everybody started thinking about how to balance economic development with the exploitation of energy for economic growth. That was when the climate change debate got hotter and hotter. And therefore, every policymaker, every nation was now compelled to consider the effect of utilization of energy on the environment. And therefore, it was very necessary to consider the energy mix and how it affects the economy, and then how it affects the environment as well. Now, having said that, each country has its own peculiarities when it comes to energy security. What kind of technology are you going to deploy such that you have very limited carbon footprint, but you achieve acceptable economic growth so that your people, your citizens will have a reasonable standard of living. Now, we have done a lot of work in terms of the renewable energy systems and also in terms of clean fossil energy utilization. Now, if you look at the case of Nigeria, we have natural advantages in terms of fossil energy, especially gas, and then coal, and then of course petroleum products. We are also endowed with hydro, especially a large hydro power system like we have in Shiroro and Kainji. However, these part of the energy mix are what we have exploited for so long, and we exploited them in a very centralized manner, in which we didn't, and up to now, haven't gotten the technology to support such centralized exploitation of huge energy delivery, both in terms of the generation, in terms of wheeling the power from the generating point to the consuming point, and of course, we've all discussed also the distribution problem. Now, the reality is that we have to focus on the energy mix that will have comparative advantage in exploitation and also in developing the appropriate technology to exploit such. I think that is where the implementation of the new act will involve, from my own thinking, the state government, yes, but also the rural electrification agency, who have hitherto concentrated on how to deliver power to the people in the rural areas, rural in quotes, because almost every part of Nigeria have some rural aspect of it, including the big cities.
We'll return to you in a moment. Let's see if we can take in this call from Lagos. Caller from Lagos, hello?
Hello?
Yes, Sonny.
Yeah, I see with you. Hello, Mr. Christopher.
Yes, go ahead, we can hear you.
Yeah, sir, please, I don't know if I may contribute. I want to talk of. Hello, sir. Are you hearing me? Are you hearing me, sir?
Yes, go ahead, Sonny.
I want to discuss concerning tariff. Yeah, concerning the, they are giving us a high price. They are giving us a high price. They are giving us high price concerning the NEPA bill. So if we can discuss concerning that issue, I don't know. Yeah, if you people can help us to discuss about the prices that NEPA are giving to us.
We're going to come to the issue of tariffs, certainly, because it's all part of this as well. And don't forget that Kunle Olubio is a member of the Presidential Committee on Tariffs. He's right here with us. So we're going to come to that in a moment. But then let's quickly go on to Dr. Amadi. Yes. And perhaps we can start the issue of the tariffs with you now. Because with this act and the envisaged participation of states and companies, what are we going to be looking at here in terms of tariff? You did say something about the challenges with commercialization at one point in time. And this also has been one of the greatest impediments. There's been this arguments back and forth. If we have an appropriate tariff for the electricity that's been distributed and sold in this country. And well, it's well known that 3/4 of the people who are subscribing to electricity here are groaning under what they see as very high tariffs here. Okay, just before you respond to it, let's quickly take in this call from Nasara and then we'll return to you. Right. Hello? Hello, Isaac from Nasarawa, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, sir.
Right, go ahead.
Sorry, good. Without much waste of time, I want to talk confining the tariff as you.
Okay,
the other speaker confining the tariff. Yes, one of the issue we are facing is the billing. The billing is one of the major problems we're facing in this country. Like in Lafia, a particular house is giving 50,000 naira. Could you imagine a house of 10 to 15 rooms is giving 50,000 naira today? And again, prepaid meters were, some people pay for prepaid meters, and yet none was given. It's all few persons in Lafayette, in Nassau State, that you see them having these prepaid meters. So we don't know where the problem is coming from. I think the government should do something about this. And talking about investing in some of these local
Okay, looks like we've lost that line. But anyway, he's made the point, tariffs and all that, and that was what Dr. Sam Amadi was going to start responding to just before we took the call. Yes, Dr. Amadi, you're on.
Look, like I said, commerciality is very important. Now, the discourse always say the major problem for them is what they call cost-reflective tariff. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it's more like a scam. The tariffs have proved. When we started in 2010 for the privatization, the tariffs were much lower. It was probably one of the lowest in West Africa. Today, we are somewhere between middle to top. So it's not as bad as it used to be. That's really an important fact here. The second point is that some of the crises with financial viability is not the tariff rate as much as the poor market structure system of the disco themselves. They have not reduced the losses. We're talking about loss level that is maybe in some cases as high as 50% or more. What that means is that for every 100 megawatt of power you receive, you will lose about 50 megawatts of power or more. And that's not is good enough. And again, the Kunle said, when we were there, did a snap audit, and that audit showed that discos were not moving like a regulated entity. A regulated entity must have their cost benchmarked and reviewed. You can't give your CEOs whatever you like. You can't, like some of them did, give them big houses in Asoko. That's why it's called a regulated market. And let me tell you a story. When I was NEC chairman, by the time that the minister there, one of the ministers I mentioned, wanted to put in about 5 billion in a disco, and I was in a meeting with the president there, and I said, look, you can't put zero money into a regulated entity, except the regulator verifies what to call first relevance. Is that amount relevant? 2, prudence. Is it procured prudently? Because that money will be recovered through consumers. So if you're not prudent, if you set up your costs, then you won't have financial viability. So yes, we're going to make sure that the tariffs are cost reflective and are competent. We also have to make sure that the management of the entity, the license, are regularly monitored so that they are prudent. If you go and use a 50 billion naira investment to supply 200 megawatts of power, that is inefficient. Where will you recover the money from? So consumers will be paying maybe 200,000, 200 naira per kilowatt hour. So the cost will be too high. In the economics of price, I want to call rate shock. You can't give people 60%, 40%, 80% rate increase. But at the time in this, when I was there too, when we had some places 180% increase, and I have to say no, let's rebase it. Everywhere in the world, you have to price electricity in a manner that is affordable. The US has some of the cheapest power in the world because historically, the Americans have the most regulated and the most judicialized process of rate making. That means everybody can challenge those rates, challenge the sciences, challenge the economics, and the utilities are bound to have public hearing. And public hearing is not just announced, come to our hotel. You issue a notice, the Federal Register, you accept intervenors. These groups have their economists, they write you big papers, 200 pages, challenging the assumptions, the regulator sits. And the chairman of those commissions are not the ones who make the case. They sit like judges. I heard both parties and make decisions. That's why the US has very low or relatively low tariffs. So I think that the notion around cost of is an opportunity to exploit consumer. It's balanced. When we're there, sometimes we do a 15-year tariff framework or 10 years. What's the idea? The idea is that what you didn't recover in year 1, year 2, you can recover in year 3, year 4, year 5. That is the problem. The people who are running this network must have capacity to borrow money in the long term, and borrow money and recover long term. If you say, for example, you want to spend 200 million to reset your network, don't expect 200 million will be recovered in 1 year, 2 years. No, you have to spread out over the year, and that will help the tariff to be bearable. So I'm totally in support of having commerciality based on But I'm saying that that is not an excuse to say, look, you're also inefficient. It's part of your job to borrow long term and recover long term.
Okay.
Part of your job to make those investments and improve service so that when you improve quantity supply, the unit cost will be less, and therefore consumers will have more incentive to increase paying more and more. So it's two-way. Today, the discourse are 50% complicit in their commercial liquidity.
All right.
Not consumers here.
Okay, let's go back to the phones now. We have Umar Anache calling in from Birnin Kebbi. Hello.
Hello, Ciro. Good evening.
Good evening.
And good evening, gentlemen. The issue of light is very, very important to the economy. Medium and small enterprises use light mostly. So if the economy needs to be revived, definitely light has to be there. And the problem of light in Nigeria is metering. We are not properly metered. Consumers were not properly metered. So there is no way they can gain in terms of investment in power. That is that for that. And I want to throw a question to, I don't know whether it's engineer. I joined the conversation late. Please, I need an explanation. We have a situation here in Birnin Kebbi where our the power station burned, even the control house burned, and there is allegation that it was the distribution caused it, because they said the distribution refused to distribute power to the customers. I just want to know whether that thing can happen. If it can happen, then there is no need for distribution company. There is no need for distribution to be there, so it should be abolished. The transmission can go directly and collect their own money from customers. May God continue to bless our country. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Umar Anache. Well, gentlemen, I guess from this angle, we might be able to get a clearer picture of it between distribution, transmission, and distribution. Yes.
No, let me speak to that. It's from my constituency as a consumer. Well, basically, pre-privatization, I want to use Ikeja. My friend was MD, the benefit of inside engineer Kamnono was MD of Ikeja Electricity Distribution Company. I would recall that the aggregate of technical collection and commercial losses, AT&C losses in Ikeja pre-privatization was reduced from 60% and was going downward to about 30% pre-privatization. Ikeja and one or two discos, you can use them as an example. Then having said that, and it was commercially viable. They were able to pay contractors, bought about 50 Helios buses and what have you. Now, it's like when you buy a vehicle and you give it to a commercial driver, they will tell you they cannot return money because they were waylaid by VIO, they had issues with road safety, they have this, and they will not return money. But if you check very well, if you check if you link the BVN of the driver to the inflow of cash and the kind of bokoto and pepper soup that he goes to places to go and eat and fish, you discover that the driver will be living large. That's exactly the picture we are getting from the leakages that have been created by regulatory compliances or regulatory subterfuge, weakness of regulatory ecosystem. The regulator knows exactly what to do, and the NEC order, in fact, NEC has the highest order in the whole universe of every, even for sneezing in the ecosystem, they have order for sneezing. But having said that, one, the discourse are low on collection efficiency and billing efficiency. There are a lot of losses from that angle, and because customers are not being metered, they conveniently close their revenue target with estimated billing. Each of the distribution transformers ordinarily are supposed to have what they call telemetry to be metered, so that the inflow of energy to a particular street is usually measured, so that even when you take out those of meter, you can still have an idea of what we're supposed to have. So in 2020, we have what we call capping of estimated billing by Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission. Pressure was brought to bear by the cartel. Now in the power sector, we have what they call the energy cartel using the electricity sector. Pressure was brought to bear on the regulator to detention capping. The essence of capping is to incentivize or encourage the distribution company to meter customers. It was detention. In 2020, most of the people in rural areas or semi-urban areas like R1, R2, and what have you, they were asked to be placed on 3,000, 5,000 naira a month. Now we asked for new, instead of having like what they would call compound or yard or gida that has about 20 rooms or 20 flats, we felt that the discos were losing because they were lazy, they were not doing customer enumeration. If you don't have data, if a sector is not data centric, you don't even have accuracy of data, customer enumeration. Now you use the available, it's like few Nigerians who are paying tax bear the burden of those who don't pay. So the discourse, first of all, in the last 10 years, have refused to do enumeration. I placed a call to a former MD of Abuja Electricity Distribution Company. I was in Waru, a community along Apple Resettlement. And because they don't engage, they engage people who are not even hard work staff. They say volunteer. How can you engage somebody who say volunteer? Especially so they for like a place where you have 20 flats, they were now using 1B to pair them together. And you now give such a place, you still have people that pay 500 naira. And maybe they are on 33 kV line supply. Okay, so these are the issues of collection efficiency, revenue efficiency, and this AT&C losses that is being declared. I gave you an example. Most of these things, I just gave you an example of the taxi driver. They are used as lame dog excuses to make sure they don't do remittance.
Just before you come in, Doctor, let's get this call from Mina Suleiman, who's calling in from Niger, I believe.
Good evening.
Yes, good evening.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
My contribution is still about tariff. Please let the tariff be addressed, because the bogus bill they are bringing, they are just giving the bill people cannot afford to pay. And at the end of the day, they will say Nigerians are owing them huge amount of money, which they themselves created on Nigerians. Let them give the holistic tariff so that this thing will move forward. Let us be honest between ourselves and God. We are not doing anything good to Nigeria by imposing hardship on them. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Yes, Dr. Abubakar Atiku.
Speaker for the he raised a question of whether we need the distribution company or to allow transmission company to deal directly with customers. First of all, let me say that technically, when distribution company did not pick load from transmission company, as he said, it will not amount to any fire hazard or
so
danger.
That's clear.
Yes.
If the distribution company does not, if they reject the load from transmission, that cannot lead to fire.
It can't lead.
So
and another also pertinent thing is the issue of this metering. You have to look at the two separately. Issue of tariff is different from an issue of metering. Tariff, like Dr. Sam Amity said, it is necessary to have cost-reflective tariff for all power sector stakeholders to be able to operate. Then coming to the meters, inadequate meters will lead to estimation, and most of the grouses of customers are on these estimated billings. That is where they are either cheated or they should change the company. So we have to emphasize more on metering, and the government has done quite a lot to make sure that we have these meters through Nigerian mass metering project, National Mass Metering Project, and also through meter asset providers. So there's a lot of initiatives that is happening to be able to get meters across to people. Like I said earlier, about 7,000 7 million meters gap. Metering gap is existing, which has to be bridged as quickly as possible for us to make progress in that area.
Okay, another caller, this time from Lagos. Joel, is it Joel, I believe? From Lagos. Go ahead.
How are you doing today?
Yes, go ahead. Hello.
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go on.
Okay, so personally, I have an understanding that Nigeria has a lot of issues with electricity. But I feel personally that international bodies need to be placed into the system, because we as Nigerians were not ready for this break. We're not ready for it. We need international bodies to come in, take place, let the country charge them on percentage, and let them distribute the electricity to the country. It's done everywhere in the world. It's done everywhere. We can't continuously feel that we can handle something that is above us. We're millions and millions and millions of people. Even if you go to other countries, you'll see that a lot of people have adequate electricity. Look at small countries. Yes, we're not as big as them, but we are the giants of Africa. So when we can't handle things like this, we need to bring exterior bodies to come in and have an investment in a country where we share a 50 or 60, whatever percentage, but we need to give the people what they need. And until we stand on our feet, that would help us to establish what we're looking for. We can't do it by ourselves.
All right. Thank you very much, Joel. Let's see. I'd just like to return quickly to Kunle Olubiyo at this point in time, because beyond those who complain about estimated billing, who don't have meters, there are others who have the meters, especially, the smart meters now, and who are saying the tariffs are way, way, way too high. Now, is this the real cost of energy?
Meter is an electromechanical device that is usually configured. You garbage in, you garbage out. If you give an artificial intelligence command or software, you design it to do exactly what it's meant to do. Now, I was privileged to be part of the struggle for the establishment of NEMSA, Nigerian Electricity Management Service Agency, which is this, like the NAFDAC for the power sector, and they are in charge of meter test station. But the business of NEMSA is routine tests, type tests, and meter testing and certification. Now, all over the world, we have international standards for different specifics. You know, in the health sector, you have international standard, which is domesticated with SON, and SON, based on our country commitment, now created, encourage government through WTO, our country commitment to WTO to create NAFDAC, to create telecom and what have you. So that's why we have NEC and NEMSA based on our country commitment, the electricity subsector. But beyond that, the international standard generally, whether for battery, whether for metering in particular, is within the context of legal metrology. And that legal metrology is domiciled with Standard Organization of Nigeria. Now, if you have a meter that's as a device for energy accountability, is the meter itself configured deliberately, not properly calibrated, configured deliberately to shortchange customers?
Some people think so.
No, I was not at that. I have personal experience. What we're saying is that if you go to a typical petrol station in Nigeria, go with your measuring can. There are filling stations that you and I will not even drive in. If you go with your measuring can and go and get fuel from the filling station, you will discover that if your measuring can, if it's 25 liters capacity, put a measuring can. It's like what you use to wet flour. Take it to a filling station. Let them put fuel for you. Your 25 liters you buy from the pump is going to give you like 20 liters or 22 liters. Are we saying that this is not known? It's known. So there are synergy in this aspect. The same thing in the grocery, where you have adjustment of scale. Now in the metering, there are meter manufacturers under MAP. Each of the discos were given the liberty to do procurement locally, so that as a meter manufacturer, if you are not ready to design for specific, to configure, to do adjustment to, so I'm saying it without apology. If you are not ready to do that design, you are not going to get the right kind of patronage. So we need to encourage SON to do enforcement, and so that proper calibration of these meters, that's our area of concern, because there are gaming of the system.
Okay. Let me just put this to you, Dr. Atiku Tambwal. Have you heard these allegations? And have you heard them, particularly for your AEDC, that those meters are configured to just run off and shortchange consumers?
Well, I think there are allegations, really. Some meters, they say, run faster than others.
Yes.
In houses, they call them bariwa. I mean, they run past. But the issue is, like he said, NEMSA has the statutory responsibility to ensure that when meters are either brought in from outside or manufactured here, assembled here in Nigeria, they should conform to the standard. There should be routine check and random checks on the meters. So it's the responsibility of NEMSA really to ensure that this is being done. And like he said, any distribution company that is capable of this should be properly sanctioned by the regulator.
Let's go over to Professor Emenike Ejogu, who's in our Enugu Center this time. And the question is straightforward, arising from this back and forth about tariffs and whether things are... The Act, when you have more players, more states, how will this affect the question of tariff and what people are paying for electricity? Because where it is, where the electricity, where it's even, supplied, people say it's too expensive, and sometimes they're even paying more than what they receive.
Thank you for that question. Let me just start from the technicalities. Sometimes the meters are running faster because of the local connection of where it's done. You have to question, number one, if the household is properly earthed. Sometimes the meters are running faster and consuming faster, not because the meter have been tampered with, but sometimes because the accommodation or the building have not been properly earthed. So it's part of those technicalities I've been talking about. There are a lot of, some of what we are discussing now hinges on the lack of capacity, the lack of technical know-how to understand how some of these technical devices actually operate. If you understand them, some of these things are also solved. Now that's on the one side in terms of the issue of meter being tampered with or not. One has to first of all check the earthing and the connection in the household before one can actually determine if that is just mere tampering. In terms of tariff, well, energy policy makers know actually how to calculate these tariffs. And in the case of Nigeria, we have a regulatory agency that also knows how to calculate this tariff. Okay, so part of the energy cost is on the feedstock. In other words, the energy resource. Okay, in terms of the gas, the cost of getting Kainji to have enough water, for example, and then some other feedstock. Okay, so these calculations can be made transparent by the regulatory agency. It's not rocket science. If you start from the feedstock, you know how much it is for you to get this feedstock. Then you know how much it is for you to do your generation, and then your transmission, and then your distribution. So the issue of calculating the tariff is a very simple thing if the regulatory agency do their work very well. Engage the experts. Let us know how much is the feedstock, the gas feedstock, the coal feedstock, for example, and in the particular case we are recommending, for example, the waste feedstock, for example. How much is it going to cost me to generate, for example, to gather all the waste in Ibadan City or Enugu City? And then when I sort it out and get it out as an energy resource, how much is it going to cost me? So the issue of tariff can be conclusively dealt with if there is a transparent means of calculating from the feedstock right up to the generation and then to the distribution, as the case may be, or transmission, so that every Dick and Harry knows how these calculations are made, and then you make sure that the meters are actually operating the way they are operating, which means the regulatory agency will go beyond the regulation itself. They also have to have an enforcement arm that can be able to enforce if these regulations they are trying to make is being infringed upon by both the consumers or the players in terms of the people that are running the generating stations or the transmission stations. Any part of the stakeholder in the value chain that is infringing on the policies of the regulatory agency must be seen to be punished. That is one way to deal with this issue of tariff and the back and forth we've been going about. So that borders on policy and the implementation of this policy. And of course, Nigeria is not lacking in policies. We have a lot of policies from left to right. If you go into policy making, we have enough. The issue of the policy implementation, in terms of this issue of tariff, the government already have distinction of tariffs, the commercial tariff, and then school tariff, low house costing, and all that. So all those costings in the various tariffs have to be harmonized, and then so that if the government is coming with subsidy, then let us know where they are subsidizing. Are they subsidizing the generation of electricity, or are they subsidizing the, relatively speaking, the economically challenged consumers? So the policies of the government have to be streamlined in terms of tariff. And the starting point is to make sure that the calculation for tariff is very, very clear to all persons in the value chain of electricity demand and supply.
All right, thank you very much. And we're gradually winding down now. So let's go over to Dr. Sam Amadi. And, well, the whole essence of all of this, the act and all the suggestions that have been made on how to generate and distribute better, is geared towards making Nigeria energy sufficient. And the question on the lips of many Nigerians would be, how will this act now facilitate that? Yes, there will be more players, and they can now have mini grids which will satisfy specific areas. But in the long run, we're still a far cry from what it should be. What are these, what are we looking at here with all of these inputs? Because there are some who say there are cities in other African countries that generate much more than the entire country is even aspiring to.
The new law is good to work capacity, but that will require a little bit of coherence. Now, if you look at the Act, it does two things. One, it basically reenacts most of the provisions in the old law, which is basically issues around the powers of NEC, tariffs processing, so on and so on. Even the process for entering into a public market. So what it does, three things it does. First, it creates the power or allies to the new constitutional amendments to allow states to generate, distribute, and do other things, mini grids, plus upgrade their order. Second, it gives states that already have the regulatory agency to regulate themselves. You will need to now bring coherence. How will NEC coexist with these sub-national regulations? For example, the law says that where a state is still dependent on the transmission, NEC can regulate. So even if you have your own state regulator, like Lagos, or maybe I think Tinubu has done, Imo had for reason. So even if you have that, as long as you still rely on any part of TCF for your service, you are still subject to NEC regulation. So many incoherencies is to sharpen up that law to help catalyze capacity growth. Two, power is ultimately about business, generation to production. So you have to get the economics and the commercial side it's right. It's always about constitutional review. So we think, oh, give states power to create. That doesn't make any sense. The government of states cannot begin to dig holes, build power, build. They are going to rely on business, SPVs, investors to come. So you have to also create a standardized form of commerciality so that the government cannot sit back and look at this act. What does this mean for investment? What does it mean for co-location of directing plans? What does it mean for state collaboration? So we can't have streets running riot. And investors are going to watch it. So, okay, fine. And state A create a counter rule different from state B. So if we get license, like for example, Abuja Disco now is serving Niger, Abuja, FCT, Nasarawa, or to other places. Okay. So the question is, how would these states create a common platform for regulation that the Abuja Disco, whoever survives that business, would have continuing incentive to invest in the network upgrade?
Okay.
So after the quarrel around constitution, we need to get back basic regulation, clarity, coherence, commerciality, making it bankable, and then we plan process so that we can see transparency end to end. By the way, when we were there, we enacted a tariff regulation, a new regulation tariff. And it's very clear. We said, henceforth, discos will make their tariffs. But two things. One, they're going to have public consultation with all their push the network, have a record to show justification to consumers why there should be increase. Every tariff increase has to follow justification, new investment, under recovery, we show it. So when you do that, then we call for here. So the process has been made transparent, but unfortunately, the application has been less ideal. So that's what I think we should do. We need to harmonize and create a coherent regulatory commercial framework.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Sam Amadi, former chairman of the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission NEC. We thank you for your contributions to our program today. Joined us via Zoom. Thank you very much. All right. And so this is where we also say a very big thank you to Professor Emenike Ejiogu, Dean, Faculty of Engineering, University of Nigeria, Nsukka, and Director, African Center of Excellence for Sustainable Power and Energy Development, who joined us from our Enugu Network Center. Prof, thank you very much for your thoughts.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And back here in the studio, our thanks to Dr. Abubakar Atiku Tambuwal, former Managing Director, Transmission Company of Nigeria, and currently Director of the Abuja Electricity Distribution
Board
Company,
member.
AEDC, a board member of the AEDC. Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
Right, thanks. And thank you so much to the one who represents all the consumers. Kunle Kola Olubi, a member Presidential Committee Electricity Tariff, President Nigeria Consumer Protection Network.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Right.
Yes.
Now, that's our program today. We thank you for being with us. Next week, we'll be back with NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stover. Bye for now.